I decided to pivot from what happens when you stop performing neurotypical and talk about something that I've been dealing with myself lately. I want to describe something that a lot of people in this community have experienced and not known the name of. So you're in a situation, it can be a family dinner, a long day at work, a conversation that got too big, a sensory environment that asked too much, and something shifts. Not an explosion, not a breakdown, a going quiet. You don't have the words anymore. The room feels like it's happening at a slight distance. You're there, but you're not quite there. And everyone around you looks at you and thinks, good, they've calmed down. They haven't. You've gone offline. That experience is called a shutdown. And today we're talking about what it actually is, what causes it, what the people in your life are almost certainly getting wrong about it, and what you can do on both sides of it. Welcome to Wisdom from the Porch. I'm GP. This is Wisdom from the Porch. Let's start with the definition, because it gets confused with things it isn't. A shutdown is not a meltdown. A meltdown is outward. It's overwhelm that comes out. It can look like crying, yelling, losing control of the emotional expression. It's visible and it tends to be alarming to the people around it. But a shutdown is the opposite direction. It's overwhelm that goes in. The nervous system, when it hits a limit it can't manage, does one of two things. It floods outward or it conserves inward. A shutdown is the second one. The system is saying, too much is coming in and I can't process it anymore, so I'm going to reduce output as much as possible to survive this. From the inside, a shutdown feels like going behind glass. The world is still happening, but it's slightly removed. Language becomes hard to access. Not because you're choosing not to talk, because the retrieval system isn't working properly right now. You might be able to hear what someone's saying to you, but forming a response takes more than you have available. Some people describe it as feeling blank. Some describe it as being in slow motion. Some describe it as a fog that arrived without announcement. It's not the same as disassociation, though it can feel similar. It's not depression. It's not stubbornness. It's not passive aggression. It's a neurological event. From the outside, a shutdown looks like this. The person went quiet. They stopped engaging. They're sitting there looking calm. They're not responding normally to questions. And to most people, including people who love them and are trying to help, that looks like the storm's passed. But it hasn't passed. It moved inward. This is the part that matters most in this episode. The people around the shutting down in the adult almost universally misread what they're seeing. And the way they respond to the misread makes everything significantly worse. But we'll get to that. So what causes it? Shutdowns are almost never caused by one thing. They're caused by accumulation. Your nervous system has a capacity. When the demand on that capacity is sustained long enough or intense enough, it hits a floor. The specific thing that preceded the shutdown, the question that got asked one time too many. The noise that finally became too much. The comment that landed wrong. That thing is almost never the actual cause. It's the last item on the list that had been building for hours, sometimes days. This is why the question, What's wrong during a shutdown is so impossible to answer. What's wrong is everything that's been happening to your nervous system since you woke up. That's not an answer most people can receive, and it's not an answer you have full access to in the moment, because shutdown specifically impairs the ability to retrieve and organize language. The fastest pipeline to a shutdown is sustained masking. If you've been performing neurotypical all day, monitoring your behavior, suppressing your natural responses, code switching through every interaction, your system arrives home at a deficit. It's been running a secondary program at high intensity for hours. The moment the demand is removed, the system crashes. The decompression becomes the shutdown. This is why indie adults frequently shut down at home, at the end of the day, with the people they're safest with. It's not that those people caused it. It's that those are the contexts where the system finally lets itself stop performing. Shutdowns also follow RSD events. After the flood of rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which we talked about in the last episode, the system is often depleted enough that a shutdown follows. Think of RSD as the peak load and the shutdown as the brownout that comes after. Who experiences shutdowns? Primarily autistic adults, but also ADHD adults with emotional dysregulation, highly sensitive adults, and people with a trauma history. Anyone whose nervous system runs with less reserve than average is more likely to hit this floor. Here's what people get wrong and what actually helps. I'll go through the things that almost always happen during someone's shutdown that make it longer and harder. The first thing is the repeated question. What's wrong? Are you okay? Talk to me. Tell me what happened. These are loving impulses. They're also exactly the wrong move. Language access is one of the first things to go in a shutdown. Being asked to produce language when you can't is like being asked to run on a leg that's in a cast. The request doesn't help. It adds load. Another is pressure to respond. If the person doesn't answer, the question gets repeated, sometimes louder, sometimes with more urgency. Shutdown is not stubbornness. The person isn't choosing to be uncommunicative. They genuinely can't produce a normal social response right now. Pressing them for one extends the shutdown. Every demand the system can't meet is more cost it has to pay. Then there's taking it personally. This is where the most damage happens in relationships. A partner who doesn't understand shutdown reads the withdrawal as punishment, as anger being performed, as the other person deciding not to engage. Shutdowns that happen repeatedly in a relationship without a shared framework for understanding them tend to become a recurring source of conflict that never fully resolves because it's never accurately named. What actually helps is the opposite of all of that. Quiet, low stimulation, no demands, no questions, familiar physical comfort, a specific texture, a temperature, a blanket, a particular sound or the absence of sound. Physical proximity without verbal expectation, if that's what the person needs. Time. The most useful single thing a person close to a shutdown indie adult can do is say, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, and I don't need anything from you right now, and then actually mean it. One practical tool that changes this dynamic before it happens, a shutdown signal. A word, a phrase, a simple hand signal agreed on in advance that means, I'm offline, I'm not gone, I need no demands for a while. Building this agreement before a shutdown occurs means it doesn't have to be communicated during one. when communication is hardest. It also removes the ambiguity that produces the "are you mad at me?" interpretation. The signal means one specific thing, and everyone knows what it means. The confusion doesn't happen. So, how do you come back from a shutdown? Recovery from a shutdown isn't linear, and it doesn't run on a schedule. The signs that you're coming back are subtle. Small movements return. You start to engage with your physical environment. Language becomes slightly more accessible. You might be able to answer a simple, direct question where a minute ago you couldn't. The fog begins to lift at the edges first. The instinct of most people around you is to start the conversation the moment they see you coming back. Resist that on both sides. The return isn't the same as full capacity. The system needs the rest that follows the shutdown, not just the end of the acute phase. Jumping immediately from shutdown into processing what caused it is like getting out of a car accident and immediately going back to drive the same road. The debrief, the actual conversation about what happened and what needs to change, belongs in a window of full capacity, not immediately after, not the same evening if the shutdown was significant. When language is back, when both people have resources, when the conversation can actually produce something useful, that's when it happens. One more thing. If you're having regular shutdowns, that's a signal worth listening to. Not a verdict, a signal. Something in your environment is making sustained demands your system doesn't have the resources to meet. That could be a job, a living situation, a relationship dynamic, or a schedule. The shutdown is the system telling you the load is too high. That information deserves a real response, not just better coping strategies for what happens after. Before I go today, I want to start something new on the porch. Starting with this episode, this is Heard You. I read your comments, all of them, and some of them are going to come back to the porch. Not to answer questions, not to give advice, just to acknowledge what you brought and bring it back to the room. Here's the first one. Jaden left a comment under the episode of Why Stimming Can Feel So Shameful. She wrote, "We adopted a son a few years ago at birth. He's now been diagnosed with autism and stims a lot. I find myself going above and beyond in justifying his stimming to family and friends and even strangers. I appreciate you reminding me that his stimming isn't their problem, isn't even my problem, definitely isn't my son's problem. I was definitely raised in a be still, be quiet household. His stimming goes against everything I was shown, but I was shown wrong, and I want him to know he's not in the wrong." Jaden, what you just described is the whole work. You were raised in a be still, be quiet household, and you are raising your son in something different. You don't have a blueprint for that. No one does. You're building it in real time, in front of family and friends and strangers you feel the need to justify him to. The fact that you feel that pressure tells you exactly how much the world still has to learn. The fact that you're doing it anyway tells you exactly who you are. He's going to know he's not in the wrong because of you. So your one next step, if you share your life with someone, have the shutdown signal conversation before you need it. Not after a shutdown, now. Here's what it looks like when I hit my limit. Here's what I need. Here's the signal. That 5-minute conversation changes what happens in the moment. If this helped even a little, you can follow the show, so these conversations are here when you need them. Today's episode is supported by Cloud Microphones. Cloud Microphones makes the microphones this show is built on, built for voices that have real things to say. Find them at cloudmicrophones.com. Monday, we're talking about making friends as an adult when connection doesn't come naturally. See you then. This has been Wisdom from the Porch. I'm GP. You're always welcome on the porch.